webinar. Today, we'll be discussing the role of community policing in the fight against insurgency. And the guest speaker today is our very own Nate Akpen. I think he prefers to be called Nate. When I first met him, I think the first thing I said was Nata or something like that. And he said it's Nate, not Nata. So he's a physician in training, as he fondly calls himself, at the Benin State University Teaching Hospital in Nigeria. And alongside many others, I'll be providing some inputs to this discussion. I must confess, and at the same time, I must apologize to the House that I was totally engrossed in so many activities that it's escaped my mind that today is another day for a webinar. I'm so sorry about that. And a couple of things didn't help either. The PRO got across to us or sent a reminder just less than 12 hours to the presentation, or less than 24 hours rather, to the presentation. And the presenter himself, in form of Nate, did not remind me that today is going to be the webinar. So in all honesty, I didn't have much input to the slide, but we'll see how we get on today. That being said, our time is fast spent, and I think the right thing to do is just to crack on to the topic of the day. He has provided his outline in forms of introduction, what community policing is, especially in Nigerian perspective, some misconceptions about community policing. I think there are so many things about community policing that many people did not understand, and some problems, attributed to community policing, and the probably way forward. And he will be concluding his presentation on the solutions and the resistance, that has been there for community policing, especially in Nigeria. So I'll be handing over the mic to the speaker, Nafi, so that he could start his presentation. And when he finishes his presentation, then I'll give some overview on the presentation. Thank you. Nate, over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Mberg, today. So without what to expect, later I can see that you dropped out again from the share your slide, and then let's go ahead, please. Later.
In case I think he's muted in case he's trying to speak. Oh, okay. No, I'm wrong. Sorry.
Barrister, what there?
Yes. Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you, sir. Yes,
we can hear you.
Oh, okay.
So is Nate there? Oh, he's joined
Yes.
with another stuff. Okay, yeah.
Yes, I've tried to join with some other device to see if it's going to
Okay.
help. I'm going to the phone now, if that works.
I think this is better.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Do you want to share your
can try to
slide
share
with
your
the
slide now.
co-host?
And
Maybe
if
someone-
Dr. Barak has
Yeah, I have the slide, but maybe I might just send it to one of the co-hosts. I'll probably just share it on the page.
Or we can probably make you a co-host.
who is sharing?
Yeah, I'm editing. Just check your stuff. I've sent it to your WhatsApp.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I'm thinking. Are you happy to share the slide just to save time? I can either share it. I think
No,
if I'm made co-host, I can share it too.
Yes, he has made you
you should be able
co-host
to share
now.
it, Dr. Barak.
Okay, share. I think share screen. Yeah, can you all see the slide now? Can we see the slide? No?
Not yet.
No.
So just a second. Let me go there again. Share screen. Can we see it now?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I'm using my phone and the thing is
Yes,
not
we can
coming
see
as
it
a
now.
slide, so I'll just be
Yes.
dragging it a little bit forward. Nate, are you happy for me to just drag it like the way you're
All
saying
right.
it?
Can
Well,
you
that appears
make
the
it
only
what's
option
it
we
called?
have, so we will work with what we have.
Yeah. What do you say?
It appears it's
Full
the only
screen.
option
Make
we
it
have, so we'll work with it.
Okay, sorry. Maybe I should just rotate the screen.
okay, fair enough.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Is it better now?
Very much so, yes.
Okay. Crack on.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, I think it's better now.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Here we go.
All right, okay. Thank you, sir, for your support and patience on
That's
this
fine.
evening of evenings.
Nate, we can hear you. You have the floor.
All right, okay. So good evening once again, and I should first of all like to thank everyone who has come out for this presentation and been really patient this evening. So I've called the presentation the Nigerian Police and Friendship Lessons. I will begin by making this statement. The Nigerian police is your friend. That's a statement that would be made by either one who is a comedian or some police public relations officer or some overzealous government spokesperson, or by an everyday Nigerian who is perhaps slightly intoxicated. But the Nigerian police force itself does not lack capacity for friendship, neither does it give friendship a new definition. And so far, it can be said that the Nigerian training schools make it a duty to remove all elements of friendship from the officers that they train. But why it's difficult for Nigerians to call officers and men of the force friends, something else has progressed, one may say even unabated. That is the sophistication and enterprising nature of criminal activities. Here, I should say that both friends and foe have suffered alike. Nigerian citizens have suffered from the sophistication and enterprising nature of criminal activities, and members of the force too have in equal measure. So if the sophistication of criminality is in doubt, one simply has to look at a newspaper headline to see force men and women complain of being outgunned and outsmarted by criminal elements. And if the enterprising nature is doubted, one simply has to, again, look at newspaper headlines to see the sums that are mentioned in connection with such activities. Next slide, please, and perhaps two forward. Next one, too. Next one still. And the next one again. All right, so the previous one, please. Yes, so criminality, in fact, was at the heart of the current operation that had the Central Bank of Nigeria change the nation's currencies. Of course, this change of currency has been called a bleaching operation in some quarters, but the huge sums that were the possession of criminals, especially kidnappers, had informed the decision of the Apex Bank to have that change of currency. Next slide. Perhaps it was this sophistication and enterprising nature that had motivated a former Inspector General of Police. Previous slide, please. I think we're almost step ahead. Still previous slide, I think we've gone a long way ahead. Yes, here. So it's this sophistication and enterprising nature that had made a former Inspector General of Police to characterize the police as lacking the ability to be proactive or reactive in responding to the challenges of insecurity. He went further to emphasize the imperativeness of partnerships or friendships in tackling criminality. Indeed, he called this new approach that was required community policing. Next slide, please. In principle, community policing seeks to generate, I suppose there was a slide before this one, but well, seeks to generate a setting whereby citizens, that is law-abiding citizens, can collaboratively.
Sorry, Nathan, yes. Sorry for cutting you short. Are you happy with this? Is it this one that you're referring to, the introduction one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is exactly where I am.
Okay.
Yes. So community policing, in principle, that is at its ideal, it seeks to create a setting whereby the police and citizens, that is the law-abiding citizens, can collaboratively work to solve problems, to share resources, to prevent crime, to promote interagency collaboration, and to bring offenders to justice. Further, community policing seeks to reduce conflict, improve the overall quality of community life. So it could be said that community policing is based on a democratic principle whereby the police now receive the mandate of protecting fundamental rights of liberty, equality, and justice from their fellow citizens. That is, community policing is based on mutuality, both of trust and of respect, which encourages members of the community to see their own security as first and foremost their responsibility too. The team which was given had identified one form of criminality, and here I would address it: insurgency. This particular one is not captured on this version of the slides which my mentor has, but I will still speak on it. So insurgency suffers a crisis of definition. The Oxford English Dictionary, for example, views it as activities of revolt that aims to take the control of a country by force. Merriam-Webster Unabridged Dictionary thinks of it as a way of revolting against the government in power, but in a less organized way than an outright revolution. The Collins Dictionary, on the other hand, views it as a violent attempt to oppose a country's government carried out by that country's citizens. So these definitions cover a wide spectrum, both from the loose to the very strict definition. But for the purpose of this presentation, I will take on the loosest definition of insurgency, and you would find that in some places, I would use it synonymously with criminality and even insecurity. So while Nigerians and the world has turned its attention to the northwest of the country, the northeast has grown in this infamy of insurgency. The northwest, which had become a sort of terror capital of the region, having so many terror organizations to boot. For example, the Islamic State of the Greater Sahara, the Nusrat al-Islam wa Muslimi, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, the Islamic State in West Africa, ISWAP, that is, and the herdsmen, which some have called terrorists, which some have called insurgents. So the localization of terror groups in this area has been linked to a number of factors. But to think only of this region as being that which is affected by insurgency in the country is to judge insurgency by a false standard. In the South-South, for example, insurrection, though not widely spoken of, continues as a way of individuals expressing displeasure for how oil revenue is shared and how the environment is destroyed by oil companies. The Gulf of Guinea, for example, has been described as one of the most dangerous waters in the world as far as piracy goes. And in the Southeast, we have the frequent clashes between the renegade secessionist movement, which attack security operatives and burn police installments as a game. Now to return to the concept of community policing, there are a few misconceptions associated with it. Next slide, please. Of these, the foremost include these three. First, that community policing is soft policing, that it is restricted only to members of some police units, or that community policing replaces all other forms of policing styles and tactics. To address each of these misconceptions, I will do so the following way. First of all, that policing, community policing, is a soft way of policing. Well, nothing could be further from the truth because of the following reasons. And I should mention that it is thought of as being self-policing because it demands improved communication between members of the police and the public which they serve. It always also seeks to encourage liberality and tolerant attitudes towards, or the misconception rather, feels that this community policing encourages tolerant attitudes towards criminality. But it is important to define what the opposite of this so-called soft policing would be. That is hard policing. Hard policing would involve a method whereby protection of lives and property is a commodity whereby that officers foist upon citizens. Hard policing would involve an attitude that matches criminality or suggestions of criminality in its viciousness. Indeed, hard policing is not something that one should really describe. It is a sort of policing style that most Nigerians witness on highways, in police stations, and anywhere in between. And of all that may be said of community policing, the following is true about it. It is more effective in preventing crime and has greater success in achieving offender detection because the very communication which has made community policing to be called soft policing is that which allows police officers to gain intelligence from members of the public. Indeed, it is this so-called soft policing that will make members of the public comfortable in volunteering information about criminality to the police because of that trust that had been built because of communication. The second misconception, which is that community policing is only for those officers that are designated as members of a community policing unit, is quite apart from the intended ideal of community policing. Community policing is a whole of society approach whereby every police officer has a duty towards cultivating the friendship of the everyday Nigerian. This is because all the departments of the force, from intelligence to crime detection, would benefit from having and maintaining a constant communication network with the citizens. The third misconception is that where community policing is in place, all other styles of policing cease to exist. Again, this is not the case in reality, because community policing only seeks to add to the existing forms of policing. It does not erode them. So it is not a case that community policing comes in and then all other known forms or models of policing cease to exist. It is only about complementing the existing ones. Next slide, please. So the question may be asked, what would Nigeria really look like if community policing was in place? To that, one would reply simply that Nigeria would look exactly as it would if it had community policing. This is because Nigeria, as it is today, already operates upon a model of community policing. The date on the screen there, on everyone's screen, 27th of April 2004, was the date whereby the former president, Obasanjo, had launched community policing into selected pilot divisions within the Nigerian police force. This particular model of community policing was then adopted for, which was adopted for those pilot divisions, has now been integrated into the day-to-day operations of the police. So, in view of this, if Nigeria's security situation has worsened between 2004 and the current year, 2022, as it indeed has, it suggests that the Nigerian community police has functioned at a less than optimal level, to put it mildly. Again, to repeat that, between 2004, which community policing became part of Nigeria's policing framework, insurgency, terrorism, and other forms of criminality have only grown in strength. That is, these forms of insecurity, these forms of criminality have become more serious in the face of community policing. So community policing must have functioned at a less than optimum. So going forward, this presentation will take the position that if insecurity has worsened in the presence of community policing, it would be that community policing as practiced in Nigeria is the inherent problems of community policing as practiced in Nigeria have in some way contributed to the progression of insecurity. Next slide, please. And the problems that have, next slide again, please. And the problems that have been faced by community policing so far have been due to or magnified by the complexity, the size, and the diversity of Nigeria. Nigeria may very well have a population of about 200 million. The police personnel number is less than 500,000. This number also operates within an under-resourced setting. But the very nature of community policing demands that all members of the police force should do more than just react to the community problems that they are. In fact, community policing demands that members of the force should be able to prevent crimes and problems before they occur. This can only happen whereby networks are developed between the force and partnerships are developed between the force and communities. To do this, the current numbers of police officers is simply not enough. So the staffing is a grave problem that the force currently faces. But beyond numbers, the quality of those officers becomes an issue. So there's the issue of staff strength, that's the staff numbers, the quantity of police officers, and then there is that issue of their quality, if one may call it that. So both are at question, which is why it is suggested here that in the face of this form of policing, criminality has progressed. So the staff quality, the staff quantity is not optimum, which is why insecurity has progressed. But beyond numbers, a cultural shift may be required if the Nigerian police is to be truly community police in that ideal character. The Nigerian police faces a series of public perceptions that would prevent it from functioning at optimal. These perceptions range from the thinking that all police officers are corrupt, that they are brutal, that they are uncivil to community members. And these perceptions are not simply phantom. Most of them are based upon personal experience that individuals have had in connection to the police force. But then there must be dedicated and skilled police officers within the force who demonstrate tenacity, personal courage, and professionalism in a security environment that is becoming increasingly challenging. But even if such officers are in existence, the absence of this cultural shift would mean that individuals, that is the community, would be unwilling and quite unable to engage as they should with the force. The third problem that has prevented community policing from achieving its ideal is perhaps the greatest one that exists among the three. This resistance arises from, first, a lack of understanding of the true nature and essence of community policing. Here, I should make reference to the misconceptions which I had brought up earlier in the presentation, that of the community policing being a soft style of policing. So where people think that community policing would only make it easier for insurgents, for criminals to act, they would tend not to embrace it in principle. The second basis for resistance to community policing is one of fatalism. That is, a class of Nigerians, or perhaps a wide class of Nigerians, feel that the Nigerian police force are simply quite unable to change from their brutal and corrupt ways, whatever new nomenclature is given to them. Third, there is a natural human unwillingness to abandon what is known, to adopt some unknown or uncertain practices. And for many people, community policing, though it has been around for a long time, is that uncertain or unknown practice. The fourth basis for resistance to community policing is perhaps the most important. It is that of vested interest. These vested interests exist both on the side of the police force and also on the side of the community. The vested interests from the community would resist a friendlier force, as this would prevent the administration of quick justice on a neighbor, for example. The vested interests from the force would avoid being friendlier so as to have occasion to negotiate for a higher bribe rate when helping to administer quick justice. If community policing threatens all this, for example, its progression, imagine the ideal that is community policing will be beset by roadblocks, both within the force and outside of it. So again, vested interests, both from individuals, groups of individuals, and even police officers would prevent the realization of what truly is community policing, a form of policing that is open to engaging with the community and being friendlier. So I've reached a point which would have appeared to have introduced this presentation, but would actually conclude it. Next slide, please. So the theme for today's discussion was about the role of community policing in tackling insurgency. For the two members of the audience who are still awake at this point, it will be clear that the precedent had focused primarily on the nature of community policing. Now, there are various academic and formal models of community policing, but this presentation avoided focusing on those academic models because whatever model is brought in, and as the country is currently practicing one model of community policing, it would be beset by a uniform class of misconceptions and a uniform class of perceptions. But here, I would say that an understanding of community policing that has been attempted, I will be the person to put up the first question for Q&A. And that question is, has community policing failed in tackling insurgency because of staffing that is both quality and quantity, perception and resistance? If yes, can we suggest that a reversal of this problem will translate into success in tackling Nigeria's growing insurgency? As you ponder these questions, I would express my thanks to you for your time and attention this evening. And I would say that making friends out of the police force is a duty that must be done. In fact, it is when we can be truly comfortable saying that the police is our friend that we would have begun to practice community policing in truth. And it is at this time that community policing will begin to gain fruits for us in the fight against insurgency and other forms of criminality. Here, I would say, God bless Nigeria, and I would take any questions that may be. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
We can't hear your medicine. Yes, I'm sure you can hear me.
Okay, fine. You should be able to hear me now.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Good. All right. Thank you very much, Nita. That's been a great ride, a very wonderful presentation. And honestly, I like your presentation style, quite calm, confident, and then you just lay the point there. That's a very commendable one, and please keep it up. So to go to the topic of today, community policing, the fight against insurgency, and I mean, you've posted the first question, and if one follows you, well, one would be able to answer that. At this point, the community policing that we have in Nigeria might not have been much of help so far. And there are quite a lot of pointers to it, apart from the problems of staffing, perception, and resistance that you have laid out there. Even the current places where, I mean, is it your shown axis where they're practicing the community policing, the new style of community policing, which the governor actually institutionalized. There's still quite a number of unrest in that axis and stuff like that. And you've been able to lay it out to us there that community policing is not an alien thing to Nigeria. We're not just advocating for community policing to be started in Nigeria. It's something that has been in existence here since 2004 during the Obasanjo regime. But I think from what I can perceive, just like anything that you introduce into community, they usually, especially when it involves policies like this, community policing, they usually go through the innovation, the innovation stage, the diffusion stage, and then the institutionalization stage. So I think, when they brought that idea, it just probably got stagnated at the innovation stage and did not get to progress further. And, that is why a lot of people do not even know that we have a community policing strategy in Nigeria. So just before I give the mic to Dr. Mubarak, I would just say community policing, the entire aim of community policing is bringing the law enforcement agents, in this case police, close to the community, and so that they develop a relationship with the community and they can improve their intelligence gathering and use that to prevent crime, rather than solving it, rather than responding to crime. So in order to improve crime prevention, basically. But again, have we been able to do that? And if this is done properly, definitely we would be able to see, we'll be able to have some improvement in the crime rate. Because many a times these crimes are perpetrated in our communities, if not by the people of the community, but with the knowledge of one of few members of the community. Anyways, without taking much of our time again, I'll give the mic to the mentor for today to take us through, and then we can take some questions after that. Dr. Berg.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and Nafi for the wonderful presentation. That was quite commendable. I must say I'm impressed with the way you went about dissecting the topic. I think you've done your research, and it's visible that you understand the concept of community policy. That being said, yeah, I think the aim of community policing is the design in such a way that, uh, like rightly said, it's been there for decades. Places like UK, US, they've inculcated that style into their policing system, but we got to implement, or it became a new thing in Nigeria sometimes in 2004. However, where the problem lies is about the design. The natural design of community policing is to make sure that they bring the police team, the force itself, closer to the people. That is the aim of community policing. And by so doing, they will be able to solve problem, through dialogue, share resources, like we've seen in places like civilian JTF in Borno. I'm sure quite a lot of us are aware that sometimes in 2011, the civilian JTF had to come off in Borno to come and assist the military men because they felt they were overwhelmed. So that's kind of idea is what they are thinking. Share resources, share information, share intelligence, and overall prevent crime in terms of alerting the police, giving the police some early warnings that it looks like somebody wants to perpetrate crime somewhere, and you need to be aware of this. So that is it. That is this kind of design that has been there, and there are elements to it, and the element involves organization of community-based crime prevention, in the sense that whenever we have a community, we want to know how do we, in terms of study, how do we approach things earlier? How do we prevent crime from even starting? Through studying that community and knowing the kind of crime that are common in that community. Saying, for example, Nigeria as a case study, the kind of crime, the kind of criminal activity that goes on in the South is entirely different from what is obtainable in the Northeast. And what happens in the Northeast is totally different from what happens in the North Central. In North Central, you see more of herders, farmers clash, every now and then, the lack of plateau, the lack of Benue, etc., etc. Whereas in the South, what dominates the kind of criminal activities that goes on in there is more of things that has to do with looting oil and all that. So they're a bit different, and the way the police has to approach those things has to also be different. So, and the only way they could go about it is having a good knowledge of what transpires in the community. And one of the core elements of community policing is this decentralization of the command. It's designed in such a way that you don't need to get to Abuja or go to Abuja before you have the full authority to do some things. It's designed in such a way that the DPOs, the commissioner of police will have power, vested upon them to implement some things, without having to go to the central before you get things done. So those are the things. So increase police accountability to the local communities. That's one of the key elements. Again, in the Nigerian setting, which I will still get to, these are the things that are missing. Are we actually seeing the accountability from the police? Are we actually seeing the cooperation from the community? And I like the way Nati has gone about dissecting the problems. I think the problem, as he has rightly said, I would go with his approach in terms of dividing into three. The staffing, I think, is the main thing. Not in terms of quantity per se, but the quality. I think one of the most or worst poorly trained, let me just use that word, if you guys will allow me, police officers in the world are Nigerian police men. In terms of quantity, when I check the ratio, we're not actually doing badly from the standard ratio in the world. I think 1 to 660 or something like that. And presently we have 1 to 1,000. We have more than 300,000 policemen in Nigeria. So when you look at it against a 200 million population, it's not actually bad in quantity. But where the problem is the quality. Are they receiving the right training? No. The remuneration, the encouragement and all that, is it there? No. So I think that's where the problem is. So the skill is poor, the training is not there, and the professionalism is non-existent at all. And perception and resistance, well, what would you expect from a community that is not getting the right message from the police force? So it's bound to happen. The resistance is just bound to happen. There's nothing we could do about that. When we don't curb the corruption, when we don't tackle the corruption in the police system, then the resistance is bound to happen. And I must say, very importantly, that when you talk about policing system, people kind of narrow-minded, and they pay so much attention into just the policemen themselves. But that is not the idea of policing. The idea of policing is designed in such a way that there are other intelligent agencies and other non-intelligent agencies that were meant to support the policemen to work hand in hand and tackle insecurity and challenges that might come their way. So agencies like NCDC, nobody really thought, if not recently, that we've got somebody that looks like he's capable and he knows his onions well. The Buba Marwa that is trying to do a few things about NCDC. It's been non-existent for ages. We never knew that we could have somebody that could tackle crime in terms of drug abuse, snuffing hard drugs out of the country and all that. So we never knew we have somebody that could clamp down on people like that until we have Buba Marwa recently. So people pay less attention to NCDC, agencies like Nigeria Immigration Service, which are also very important in policy because they need to supply intelligence to the police and say, we've caught a guy somewhere in this, so keep an eye on this guy and all that. And they will be able to monitor it and even inform the people around and say, this guy could have some, fishy behaviors and some things that could harm you, or could come some trouble, to the community and all that, and they'll keep an eye on him and make sure that he doesn't cause problems. So agencies like FRSC, DSA, Nigeria Immigration Service, and even National Intelligence Service, they were actually meant or designed to work hand in hand with the police team to make sure that they provide the necessary support. So in terms of the insurgency, I think the way things have gone in the last couple of years, I wouldn't say it's exciting, because sometimes in the late or in the early 2000s, what we used to think about is just Boko Haram as an insurgent or a form of insurgence. But now I'm sure our major problem is even more of things like kidnappings and, farmers, herders clash, than even the Boko Haram itself. When you look at the news in Nigeria, you rarely even see Boko Haram making the headlines. Like you will see cases of kidnapping. And you would say these are the things that we actually expect community policing to curb. But rather, we created community policing system in 2004, and things have even gone worse. And the question is, what are we not doing rightly? And those things, we all know what we are not doing rightly. But I would say rather the question is, what can we do, to right the wrong? I think that's the thing that I think we should be focusing on this night. We know that our policemen are not well trained; they don't have the necessary, skills and all that. But in terms of support, what is the government doing? And even the design itself, is it even designed in such a way that it's going to work? Is that the way community policing system in other climes that have been working, is that the way they are designed? I would say no. Because in a way, when you bring somebody that doesn't even understand the terrain, the local community, and you say you're institutionalizing a community-based policing system, how do you want him to carry out his job? In Nigeria, you discover that 30 to 40% of policemen that are working in the East are from Borno. And majority of these guys, aside pidgin English, they cannot even communicate well, with the locals. So how are they going to get the information from the locals? So I would say community policing in Nigeria is just on paper, but what is meant to be in reality is actually non-existent. And what are we going to do, or what do we need to do to make sure that, we combine policies with implementation? Because there's a difference between you've got a policy and there's a difference between are we actually implementing this policy? And it boils down to investment in terms of quality training, in terms of research, because when you go and you make some searches about policing system in the UK or in the US or even other Senate club, you discover that they do a lot of investment in terms of research to their local community, and they spend billions and millions of pounds. We might not be able to spend that much, but we still have researchers that are interested, in improving things. And even with the little naira we have and with the token we have, we can promote the habit of people researching to what exactly is the problem with this famous herders clash. What exactly does the average perpetrator of crime in Niger Delta, what does he want? And how can we solve it? So we need to spend money on research. We need to spend money on quality training, and we need to reorientate even the community members themselves. That is also poor. We need to let people know that if you want peace, we have to also choose peace. Because if you don't choose peace, you can't get peace. And the way you can choose peace is to make police your friend, and at the same time, train the police that the community they are actually protecting are actually the friend, and they should stop terrorizing them. So it all boils down on research. It all boils down on quality training. And that's the way I see it is. Until we imbibe that and, we understand the concept of community police, I think is the right way to say, if you ask me, is the right thing to do, is the right step to take. But where the problem is implementation. Are we actually doing the right thing? I don't think so. So I will be drawing the curtain on that note to say, what I think we should take home today is, yes, do we have an existing community policing system in Nigeria? Yes, absolutely. What we have today, is it an ideal style, or is it even close to ideal community policing style? I would say absolutely no. I'll be very frank. I don't think we have a community policing system in Nigeria. I think the only way we have it is on paper. But in reality, the concept of policing, especially in terms of orientation of the masses and even having the trained or staffs, I think is non-existent. Thank you for having us tonight. Thanks. Can't hear you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mbarak. Thank you very much. That's quite intense, and you've taken us through almost everything that the presentation entails. I can see your hand up, Barrister Elias. I'll come to you. So we've talked about what exactly does community policing mean, and which is what we have said. It's about developing relationship between the police and the community in order to gather intelligence that would be used to prevent crime. And so again, it is at the heart of community policing is partnership with the community, is developing that relationship with the community. Yeah, so we've talked about the staffing, which when you put it into ratio, definitely Nigeria seems to be doing fairly well, but the quality of the police that we have is what is in question. And then we talk about the problems which the presenter Neta has grouped into staffing, perception, and resistance. Where you think staffing is the major problem, especially because they are not well trained, they are not mainly professionals, and not necessarily the quantity. The perception problem is another issue that we have. Then we have resistance, the resistance. So, I mean, when under the resistance, that Neta mentioned something which is vested interest, of some people that do not just believe that they will survive if there's a change to proper community policing. And this also brings us to the problem of Nigeria, because all this, the training that we're talking about, even the numbers, even the perception problem that we're talking about, all of this could be easily solved if we have if you have leaders that are committed to this cause, that know that this has to be done, and they draw up a timeline on how to go about it. I mean, take for instance the perception problem that we have, the mistrust in the police. The mistrust in the police. Go outside. The mistrust in the police. It's okay. The mistrust in police is not something new. It's not something new, and it's not peculiar to Nigeria. It's back in the 1960s. That's where the United States were at this stage that we're talking about. That's when the concept of community policing started. I mean, they started talking about it in their own instance, and it took them about 3-4 decades for them to evolve, into having a proper community policing system, in place. So when there was the mistrust, especially the Black community, and there was this, perception problem with community, with police. People feel police are out there to get them and stuff like that. And like Mubarak actually said, they invested a lot of money into research. They went ahead to do research, find out what exactly the problem is, how can we go about this, and how can we solve this problem? And they started implementing it gradually until they get to the stage where they are today. So I think, again, if we have a proper will, a proper political will, we would definitely get there. Both the police system, the Nigerian police, and the Nigerian community needs to be reoriented, because police nowadays, when people wear the uniform and they carry gun, they believe they belong to another planet, and they can do whatever they want to do. You've seen police misuse their power, just like any other Nigerian will do in their own right. So all of these things need to be put into consideration, and you cannot expect community to trust them when they've seen what they do with the power. So when you bring people into the Nigerian police, and you definitely need to let them know what their main responsibility is. You don't just wear the uniform and take gun and you start misusing. In the Senate climb, before you see gun, even with the police officers, it must be a very, very serious situation. Many times you just see them going about without anything. They're handcuffed, they're bar and stuff like that. So we need a proper change in the orientation for the Nigerian police and the Nigerian community. Research, we talk about the political will. So then we talk about policy and implementation. Nigeria has a problem of implementing things in a funny way, if at all they do, So once the world is talking about something, Nigeria just jump on the boat and then say, okay, we're also doing it, and without whether we're doing it properly or not is another thing. So we need people who actually who knows what they're doing, and this has to come with government, because if you have a president or be a president or even a governor that does not feel that the need for it, if you're pushing all of these things, you would be seen as doing too much. And one other thing that Dr. Mubarak actually said that is very important is collaboration. This is not a problem of police alone. Okay, there is need for collaboration with all other stakeholders, that are in charge of safety and security. You mentioned NCDC, you mentioned FISC, DSA, National Intelligence Service, and even the Immigration Service. So all of these teams needs to work hand in hand and with the aim of protecting the country. And again, we need accountability and transparency. We need a very strong political will, really, a very strong political will to be able to drive all of these things, including the change in design and all. The question of whether community policing is the way to go is not in doubt. Several countries have used it before, and it's definitely works. And that brings me to the point of the kind of people that Nigerian police employs. When you take somebody from Borno and take him to Ebonyi, to be police, of course, that's not a problem. If you're keeping the national police system that we're using, of course, you have to rotate them, let them go to other places. But the community policing system needs to have a framework that will be understood by everybody, because the essence is building relationship, and this has to be basically locals. And if they are not locals, they're people from the same region that will live in that region for a long time in order to build that relationship and build the trust and gather the intelligence that they need. So I'll leave it there for now and give hand the mic to Barrister Elias. You have 5 to 7 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. I want to thank the presenter for the presentation and also your mentor as well. I think this has been very, very enlightening. My contribution will be on the legal side, looking at how the institutional framework of the Nigerian police has been structured by the Constitution and the Police Act. So if we look at section 214 of the Constitution, section 214, it says that there shall be a police force for Nigeria, emphasis on a police, just one police force, which shall be known as the Nigerian Police Force. And subject to the provisions of this section, no other police force shall be established for the Federation or any part thereof. So as if the word A was not enough to emphasize that we would only have one police force, that clause goes ahead to say that no other police force shall be established for Nigeria or any part thereof. And then section 215, that's 215, goes on to lay down the structure of the institutional framework for the police force in Nigeria, meaning that you have an IGP, who is the Inspector General of Police, who is the head of the police, and then you have the commissioners of police in different states, and all of the commissioners of police in the different states, they all are under the command of the Inspector General of the police. Now, what does this mean for community policing? What it means is that we now have a community policing system where, even though we say that we are doing community policing, everybody report back to Abuja, the IGP, and they take control of command and instructions, from him. It determines pretty much so many things that happen in the police force. So it then raises the question of, are we really doing community policing, or we are just doing some sort of centralized, police system where they try to implement community policing model? And can this really work? So this has led to many states trying to gather to, or some regions trying to gather to establish their policing system, with Amotekun in the Southwest, with Iba police or what have you in the North. And there are so many constitutional debates as to whether these establishments are constitutional based on these constitutional provisions that we've read before. And this is not normal, because in many other countries where federal system of government is practiced, or some form of autonomous regions are in place, you do find incredibly well that the law permits each region or each unit of the federating unit to have their police force that will implement the community policing. So that if we're having community policing in Lagos State, the control system and the national framework will also be around Lagos, rather than having to receive instructions from, the centralized unit. So in addition to all the problems that have been identified, financing, research, and other things, I think that institutional framework too is really important, because allocation of resources will follow the pattern of the institutional framework for the policing system. So, and I think that we need to pay attention to amending the Constitution to actually decentralize the police system, to be able to create room for other solutions that have been proposed tonight. Thank you very much.
Oh, awesome. Thank you very much for that input and the insight, from the legal perspective. Because again, like you've rightly said, allocation of resources will follow the constitutional recommendation. And even if you establish something like the Amatekun and IBA, and the Constitution accurately states that there shall be only one national police force, and no other one will be established, then I think the first step will have to go to making sure the Constitution recognizes other form of this establishment. And this brings me to a point that has actually been lingering on mind, is that the community police, does it necessarily have to be that? Does it necessarily have to be separate from the national police?
That's my argument. I think that it should be separate. I don't think that the model of implementing community policing under the central unit police can work, because that's why you have issues like posting somebody from Borno to Lagos, somebody from Lagos to others, and those are operational issues. There are other financial issues too, because financing of the policing comes from the central when you have a central body. But it will come from the regional or state level if you have each independent, like Amotekun is not financed by Nigerian federal government now, for example. It would have only been financed by the states that are establishing those bodies. So here in the UK, I see some policing forces that are not central. So I hear something like Grampian police. So you will know that that police is for Grampian area and is not part of the central government. So the same thing in the US, I see maybe New York police, this one police are not, and we will see that they are controlled by, although there are challenges that have been identified with that as well, like abuse of power, anything can be abused, especially in Nigeria, where people make reference to the fact that if you have police force controlled by the state, the governor or whoever is in charge of that place can use the police force to terrorize their political opponent, especially during the electioneering campaign. But that issue is actually not peculiar to this separate policing system. Even this central police that we have is also being abused the same way in any event. So if we are looking for a solution on how policing should not be abused, those suggestions proposed by the presenter and his mentor are the solutions, such as making sure that we have enough research, we have orientation and other things that have been suggested tonight. Actually, they are the solutions. Rather than saying don't decentralize the police so that it will not be abused, we should look at how do we reform policing system to make sure that it's even impossible for anybody to abuse it, right? So I think that community policing model can only work with separate institutions that are localized, rather than having a model implemented by a central body. It's just like the same problem that we identify with other sectors too. When federal government will say they want to do something and they are doing it locally and they are implementing it from the central, from Abuja. First of all, the data is limited. You may distribute some items and those items will not get to the local level. You may adopt an approach that you think is unified, whereas the problem at each local level may be unique. So some communities in Lagos are different from communities in Oyo State. For example, I was privileged to know, for example, that Lagos is actually policed. Lagos is one of probably the only state or one of the few states that has more than one commissioner of police. So Lagos, as at the time I had this information, Lagos had 3 commissioners of police, because one commissioner was not enough to cater for the different dynamics of the local level. Everybody is familiar with Lagos, that Lagos is the only place where one comedian said I was driving and he was in traffic. Before he could say Jack Robinson, he couldn't see his wristwatch again. You understand? So the local crime rates and the population, the density of the population requires some unique features of policing that are not in some other states. So when you implement a model from the central, there is tendency to assume that everywhere is the same. And then you bring out those policies, you implement the operational control in a way that doesn't make sense in some communities. But if the institutions are in their local place where they are meant for, the opportunity for research, opportunity for data analysis, opportunity for unique problems and unique solutions you will thrive more.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for that. That's quite insightful. Mrs. Nafisa, your turn, please.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'd like to say thank you to the presenter and his mentor. So basically what I want to say is just, it's been said, it's just, focusing on decentralizing the police authority. If they're going to be community centered police, I believe that it will go a long run for them to employ members of the community itself to actually police their own community. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. For example, they can go to secondary schools to encourage people to look into becoming police for their communities, so that at least that there's a high chance of those people caring more about their community, and in the long run, it might help the community in terms of reducing crime rates. If the person, like you really know the person that committed a crime, like people, if the how do I explain it? The crime rates will not tend to go so high if members of the community know each other. I mean, if the police in the community know almost that they went to schools with them, their close community, and then that this person committed this act, it's easy for them to get them and sort of like reduce the crime rate. I mean, it's a long run for a country like Nigeria. Like, we still have a long way to go. But then if members of the community are involved, it will also provide jobs for them, help to reduce their crime rates, and because young people have jobs, and also they will feel involved, and eventually it would help the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the point is, like you've rightly raised, the community needs to be needs to be carried along and needs to be partnered with, so that they don't feel that something is being forced on them, which is what we've witnessed over time. Police, when you see a police officer, you don't think of them as a friend, you don't think of them as a partner, you just feel like, what are they going to take from me now? And a situation where, again, but this is quite unrelated, where the police that are supposed to protect you are the one that are actually extorting you in every area. You go to the mall, you go to the airport, you go to the security officers, the polices, and they are the ones that are actually flaunting the law. And you wonder how you want law to be enforced to the ordinary citizen. And even when this another situation where when they pick somebody, or when somebody is arrested, and once they know somebody at the top, the problem is solved. Again, all those things are things that needs to be shown, and boils down to what Barsha earlier said. It's not about whether it is centralized or decentralized. People abuse it anyway. We should focus on how we actually prevent this from happening. And one way, and one of the major ingredients of community policing is building a very strong relationship with the community and making them involved, because they know who are perpetrating this crime, and where they are, and the method they use, and their hide place in some instances, and they can provide this information to the police. And more so, this if community policing is properly instituted, it will employ majority of people from that community, again, which will reduce our unemployment rate, which will also make youth more engaged. And this brings me to, before I call on Barak, and this brings to what exactly is the model of the community policing that we have at the moment. Neta, I mean, in 2004, the Obasanjo, signed into the policy of community policing. What exactly does that entail? What does it say we should do?
All right. It was brought in as a sort of what we call a vertical program, whereby people who were already officers were trained in community policing, which made it be that, or which brought about the misconception, the earlier misconception, as I mentioned, of some thinking of community policing as being something restricted to a department, that is those who were trained as that. It was like an on-the-job training that was done for a select few. However, the plan was to have community policing be a course component in police training schools, so that all police officers passing through the system had learned course modules on that. So it began life as something that a select few were taught, those who were of that unit, but now something that is in schools that they are taught. So they have a theory of it. Even the person who extorts you on the road has the theory of community policing.
Interesting. And that again brings us to what we raised. This is not community policing in its proper design, in its proper model. If you just teach everyone something about 2-3 hours, or maybe even a week, and you think that's it, and it's still centralized. Again, it's interesting how we do our things in Nigeria. Like I said, the world is talking about community policing. We jump on the bus, we just do one thing, and then we say, yes, we're also practicing community policing in Nigeria. Dr. Mbarak.
Yeah, thanks. I was almost contemplating on dropping my hand because you've actually summarized what I wanted to say in that your last sentence. Because the problem is there's so much confusion out there. You are talking about community policing, and all you could do after creating the framework and all that is just to train a few number of people, maybe say within a couple of hours, maybe at best 1 or 2 months, and say this is community policing. I mean, that's not obtainable anyway. And if you ask yourself, what kind of effort have they even made since the last time, let's say the first set of people were trained? Are they actually making efforts, to train and retrain people? Because, you and I know that in this kind of, in the Senate client, what is obtainable is for you to renew your license. Even though you're actively practicing, you have to have some level of some CPDs, some form of appraisal, some form of revalidation, and all those things just to push you, and keep you going to ensure that you're on top of your game. In Nigeria, I don't think that's obtainable. So it's rather not surprising sometimes for us to see the kind of results we are getting, because we are not putting in the right effort. And when you don't put in, it's like garbage in, garbage out. You're not putting in the right effort, and definitely the result is not going to be, it's not going to be. So I think there's so many confusion out there. I think I was happy with the question you asked Nate itself. I think I was about to ask him that what is his perspective now that we've made this contribution and all that in terms of community policing. He has done some research on community policing. Now we've talked about so many things, during during the course of the presentation. Has his perspective changed, a bit from what he thought the community policing is, or what he feels the problem was, and what the problem is now at the moment? I was trying to see whether he could say a few things, after our usual contribution. So I think there's so many confusions out there. We need to unbundle the system. We need to simplify it. Sometimes I just wonder, I know maybe I might be oversimplifying it, but I don't think things are this difficult.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, all what Barrister said, it's actually a very good thing. Yeah, you can make it a component of the police force itself, which is okay. But the idea of now sending somebody from Borno to come and police somebody, you want to make it like a force under the police system, which of course there shouldn't be any problem about that. But if you're trying to do that, what you need to do, like Mr. Sata said, is you can take members of that community, to be part of that unit, and they will work hand in hand with other departments in the police. So I don't think it's that difficult, but it's just surprising sometimes how we, go about how we do our things, and we create a lot of confusion and chaos everywhere. So starting from the 1999 Constitution itself, it's more than 20 years now. We've been saying the same thing year in, year out, that we need constitutional review. We need constitutional review. I mean, we have lawyers here. I don't think much has been done on that. And if you look at the Constitution itself, I mean, it's just laughable. Somebody will look at it and say, how can you be using this, to govern a population of 200 million? You understand? So this is not fair. It's not fair on the citizens. It's not even fair on them themselves that are leading us, So the paperwork itself, is nothing to write home about. So I think we need to trim down how we do things. We need to simplify how we do things. We need to simplify, trim down our parastatus, and create that synergy. Rather than having numbers, because we have numbers in Nigeria, we are very good in that. Getting close to 1,000 agencies in Nigeria, and I can tell you that some agency like downstream sector alone, they have more than 56 agencies under the downstream sector. The oil sector. So oil sector has the upstream, has the downstream. Downstream alone, more than 50-something agencies. What are they doing? So you create sort of confusion and all that. At the end of the day, what happens is redundancy. Nobody actually does the work. Because somebody feels NCDC is there to do this work, NIS feel that NIS is there. I mean, NCDC is there to do this work, whereas NCDC also feels that NIS is there to do the work. At the end of the day, the work is not actually done. You understand? So we need to really sit down and know what we want, rather than gallivanting on things and all that, and wasting everybody's time. So I think that's the thing I just wanted to add. So it will still be interesting to know Nate's perspective. After our contribution, what does he actually think? What has changed? Is he looking at things from a different angle, or what? Yeah. Thank you.
I would give the mic to Nate shortly, but again, if there's anything I want us to take, we've highlighted this problem. We know that there is a need for a policy change from amendments from the Constitution. Even if we need to, even after that, training and retraining, orientation, research, and stuff like that. We've highlighted quite a number of possible ways of making things better. If any one of us, and those that are not here, find themselves in the corridor of power, become a senator, you become a governor, you become a president, we will call you and remind you that you need to do things differently, because it appears to me that once people get to power, their priority changes. You just want to jump on join them. Is that if you cannot join them, if you cannot win them, you join them, and then when you join them, everybody becomes the same thing. Because I cannot, believe that many of our leaders have did not actually think of these things, because but if you do this thing, you don't get money. People don't want to make unpopular decisions. People don't want to put it out there. So everybody just fall in line, eat what you can eat, leave it for the next person to come and chop, and then nothing changes in the country. Nothing changes. The patriotism is in the mouth, in our lips, is in the paper. The true patriotism, seeing Nigeria change, seeing Nigeria become better, is in the gutter. So please, I hope we can do differently. I hope we will do differently, given the opportunity. Neta, over to you.
Yes. So in reply to what has been said, I should say we could all be forgiven if we forget that we have a community police in place, because in 2009 there was an IG of police. I had quoted him earlier in my presentation. He had said we needed to have a community police force. That was 5 years after we had one in place. So perhaps he too had forgotten that we had one. So, well, who are we to not have forgotten? The issues we've raised and the success of whatever model of community policing that there is, that comes up, will always confront that issue of vested interests. Whatever model, its success will depend on that. The barrister gave us a legal perspective. So if you are to have another police force, that has to change, a constitutional review. For that to go forward, vested interests have to give way. If they're benefiting so much from the status quo, then that constitutional review process too should not follow through. If officers are to be trained properly to be professional, and that would mean disrupting the status quo, vested interest again would rather not have that go forward. So we may have, as I said, there are very different models of doing this community policing thing, but would always come back to the table of vested interests. And vested interests are not faceless people. I mean, they may be you and I. The police, we could blame them for collecting bribes, but there is that person who gives a bribe, and it's really you and I, or some person we know, to smoothen things. I mean, I get stopped on the way. Maybe the fine is 50,000 naira. I find that if I give the officer 5,000, he would let me go, and the officer knows too that the 5,000 will go to his pocket, whereas the 50,000 will go into the government coffers. So we settle it there, and then I come back here to say the police is corrupt. So we are the ones in some way aiding them be unprofessional. And if that vested interest, if that aiding of corruption continues, even if you have a community police, having individuals whom we grew up with in same communities, it should even make it easier perhaps for us to want to induce them with bribes, to have them act So this model of police which we have at the present time, the challenges that it faces would be similar ones that community policing of whatever model would face. I'm thinking of the American system where there are various state police forces, community policing, whereby you have a police at state level that act at state level. Then when it involves more than one state, you have the FBI. So FBI really is the national police of that country, while they have the local ones. So FBI comes in when you're having issues that cross state boundaries and involve more than one state. The French system, and it's practiced by a number of French countries, even French neighboring countries, they have something they call the gendarmerie. So that's like the state police. But there now it's a little different from what the Americans have. So these gendarmerie, they are posted to various places, but once posted there, you are garrisoned there. Then there is a national police force which acts out of the capital of the country. But it has its successes, though it's vastly different from it as practiced in the US. So it comes of the collapsing point is that there is a select class of impediments to policing as we have now that if not taken away, whatever model will bring in, it will still beset it, it will still befall it, and issues will remain.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nifemi. And honestly, I'm inclined to agree with you, okay, about the vested interest and political will, like I've mentioned earlier on, because if you know that nobody cares at the top, you will do what you like down here, because just feel what's the point? And like he said, 15,000 is going to the coffin of the government, but I can just collect 5,000 and everybody is happy. Most likely, an inherent human being would want to do that, okay? And if we have a community, a policing system where people that you grew up together are in the police force, there's a tendency that you want to abuse that relationship. And those are the downside of it. But the upside of it is that if you have a community policing system, with people that actually know the terrain very well, the success of intelligence gathering is higher. And with training, when you see people in the FBI or in CIA, when you see them act, they act beyond themselves. There is this national honor, there's this patriotism that prevail over whatever any other thing that do. They hold that they sworn to get to office means a lot to them, and we really need to come there. You understand? Because if like I said, deterrence is one of the major way of curbing things, especially in the states in Nigeria. People don't like to go to jail. People don't like to be punished. People don't like to be penalized. Once you do it, even to people that are very close to you, somebody offer you bribe, just offering bribe, and you arrest them right there and then for offering you bribe. You understand? But this has to come from within. This has to come from the police force. You understand? While a lot of orientation also goes to the community that don't bribe the police. If you do this, this is the penalty. Okay, there'll be some exceptions. There'll be people that will be permitted at the high level, but it's not be pervasive. It's not be something you see on the street everywhere. It's not be, of course, even the US, the UK that we quote, you will see that at the high level, there are things that are quite unheard of. Okay, but not on the streets, not everywhere, and of course, that's a step. It's only when you're able to curb it there at this lower level that you can start talking of how do we reform the upper there. But when it is everywhere, then there's going to be a problem. So, and the IGP that mentioned that there is a need for community police force. Honestly, I don't think he had forgotten that there's a community police force. I think he realized that we don't have a community police force. Because if all the community policing that Obasanjo invented in 2004 is about just giving some modules in class and selected people, or even now institutionalizing it into the class when you're recruiting police, I personally do not think that is a proper community policing.
That's honestly a joke.
So, and the IGP had seen that, and he said there's a need for community policing force. A community policing force where almost every day, or in fact every 4 hours, you will see a police car patrol Isale Aluko in Ilori, Kwara State. because that's their terrain. You will see a police going through Ajegunle, you understand, or what's it called? Where did I work in Lagos? You know, so and that is their own station. That's where they belong. You understand, and they know people who they should talk to. If there is a crime in an area, they know if it's maybe snatching of purse of wallet, they know where it's likely to be, where they can trace it to. So that's what that is when we, and at that point, people will know that they cannot mess with the police. You know, they cannot mess with the system, and that is when the system is actually well compensated, and they are also motivated. Because another thing is when the police officer only collects 5,000 naira per month, and you are giving him 50,000 naira right on the spot, it's difficult not to be corrupt. You understand? So not many people would have that level of patriotism and devotion. You understand? So again, quite a lot of things needs to go into it when it comes to remuneration, training, and retraining. And talking about training, this Amotekun, I knew a guy where I was working in an hospital. He was our security officer, has no formal education. He is one of those that will put parole on his arm. And the next thing I heard is he's been recruited into Amotekun. So even where we have this change in the police, in the constitution, and we institutionalize the community policing, there is a need for a framework. You know, you don't just bring everybody into it. And this one it smokes, it drinks everything. This one can definitely abuse any little thing in the hospital. When some people wants to, they say, "Man, you want pani," you know, those kind of things. And this is the person that's now trusted with the national with the state policing apparatus. So again, it's a whole lot of things. But honestly, community policing properly practiced can help our situation in Nigeria, as diverse as we are. You know, I think that's what we need, rather than a central policing force that controls everything. And of course, we've practiced it for how long now, and we see what the result is. I think it's a time to see a different model, even if the model seems to work somewhere else, but it's not working for us. It's time to try it differently and see what exactly we can get from it. So Anthony, can you give us a closing, your thoughts on this, and then maybe a closing remark? Okay, I don't think M20 is there. In that case, Barrister, over to you. Closing remark. I mean, yes, closing remark, and then we can call it a day.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much for all the contributions. I'm particularly taking something away from all the discussions, that what we have in place is a joke and not community policing. So we need to set up a proper one. We also need to make sure that our policing system emphasizes intelligence over use of force. So intelligence gathering, rather than just entrusting people of questionable character with powers that are susceptible to abuse. So thank you everyone for the contributions, for the participation, and I do hope that we will enjoy the rest of our evening.
Mentor.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks to the presenter, Mr. Nafi. I think you've done a wonderful job. I'm quite impressed, and I'm sure everybody that has been here since morning will also be impressed with your methodology of presentation. I think you should just keep it up. You're already on the right track. You're not sounding like a doctor at all. You know, you're sounding like a barista, a typical barista. I hope one day you wouldn't decussate into the legal field and abandon us in the medical field. Yeah, anyways, that's by the way. So I think you should keep that up. That was a very good presentation, to be honest. Yeah, that was good. And the moderator himself, the chairman of the foundation, we thank you for taking your time to dissect what policing is, and what we have in Nigeria, and the way forward. That was a powerful one. Thank you. And for all the contributors, I think you guys have personally added to my own little knowledge. I didn't really know much. So it's good to have you guys around. You guys are so resourceful, and listening to different perspectives can only make you better. I think I'm going back to my bed this night because I was sleeping before the presentation starts in a better fashion, or bettering myself and all that, which is the main thing. So I feel enriched. I feel I've learned a lot. I feel galvanized, which is the aim, of the foundation itself, and the aim behind, putting forward such a presentation and webinar. So we thank every contributor. We thank everyone that has made this a day, and we hope to see you guys tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Barrister. For about tomorrow, the presenter has an exam and we will not be having a presentation tomorrow. So we will reschedule once she is available for a presentation.
I think that's welcome.
Thank you very much.
It was like us.
Okay. Have a good night. Our night has started since 4 o'clock here. Thanks to Winter.
Right. See you guys when we see you. Bye. Bye,
Bye.
Nati. Thanks. Yeah.
Bye.